Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, the Practical Voice Podcast. Today, we're talking about voice shopping, and we are giving you a guided tour around why voice shopping is worth jumping into now if you're a retailer, some of the trends surrounding voice shopping, some of the forecasted trends around voice shopping as well, how you can essentially get all of your product inventory onto Alexa really simply and easily using BlueTag. And BlueTag is our guest today. Shilp Agarwal, who is the CEO of BlueTag, was in the Alexa Accelerator in 2018. They are now providing a really straightforward and simple way for retailers to get on board on the Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant platform. Essentially, this whole episode is geared around helping retailers understand what the value of voice is for their brand. And so you will have immense fun, as me and Dustin did, on this conversation with Shilp Agarwal, which is presented by Sparks, the Sparks app. It is a podcast app which allows you to capture sparks. Sparks are like ideas that you have during the process of listening to a podcast. If you're like me, then when you're listening to a podcast, you tend to zone out every now and then. Someone says something really interesting, gets you thinking about something, but then usually that thought is gone and it's gone forever, and then your attention is brought back to the podcast. What Sparks lets you do is capture those thoughts and capture those sparks, as it's called, within the app so that you have them there forever. You can always refer back to them, and when you do refer back to them, they're all time-stamped, so as soon as you open a Spark, it will immediately throw you back to the point in the podcast where you initially had the thought, so you can play back that part of the podcast. It is fantastic. I've been using it for a few weeks now, and I'm really enjoying it. The Sparks team are looking for feedback. The app is in beta, and they're looking for feedback from innovative early adopters. And so if you listen to podcasts, which it sounds as though you might do, and you use a podcast player, which most of you do because only 10% of you listen to this on the website, and if you are an innovative early adopter, which you must be if you've been listening to this podcast for the past 2 years, then check out the Sparks app. Visit sparksapp.io/VUX. That's sparksapp.io/VUX. Download it, give it a whirl, and don't forget to send the team your feedback. Thank you, Sparks, for sponsoring this episode of VUX World. Now, without further ado, this is Shilp Agarwal, CEO of BlueTag, on VUX World.
VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. Branding with the big faces. I love listening to it.
Kane Sims.
Kane Sims, the one and only.
Britain's finest, Mr. Kane Sims.
Dustin Coates.
I like it when you guys are together and talking about voice.
Without further ado, welcome to the show.
How's things, Dustin?
We're going pretty okay, Kane. How about you?
All right. How's the lockdown?
It's coming okay. I am. So I've been locked down since Thursday, and so I am definitely getting a little bit of the cabin fever. How's it going with you?
Kind of. I've been working from home for a week or so. It's not necessarily fully locked down in Britain right now, but the schools are closing on Friday, so people listening to this now, last Friday, just like a few days ago, basically. And so people are just in a blind panic, thinking, they can't get any Calpol for Artie anywhere, so I don't know what's going on. What about over there, Shilp? How's things over there with on your end?
Things are good. Same thing. It's a complete lockdown. Today we are in our first full week completion of working from home remotely, the whole team. So last Thursday we started working remotely, and same thing. The schools are shut down as of this week. So yeah. But fortunately, our businesses doesn't really get impacted that much, but we definitely understand the impact on a lot of other businesses that rely on physical, traffic and movement. So yeah.
It's mad. It's so where are you based?
We are based in New York.
New York. Fair enough. Fair enough. So I think New York and maybe Paris. I don't know what the situation is and how it compares to London. I think London's slightly ahead of the rest of Britain, but I think Britain, from what I understand, is slightly behind. I think it's slightly behind Paris. I don't know what the situation is with New York, but New York's a pretty big space to totally lock down.
Yeah, New York's. Now all the restaurants are closed. This week they announced that every restaurant, bar, everything is closed. And I think the reality is that I think it's necessary because it's so crowded that people, it is the cabin fever thing. Like Dustin was saying, it definitely gets to you, but I think it's important. So I think, naturally, unless you're forced to stay home, people are still going out, which I think is good to avoid right now. So yeah, it's tricky.
what are you doing to stay in touch with your colleagues to make sure that everyone's still staying connected?
We do our regular calls, which we do over video, which used to happen in the office. We do that. I did that actually right before this, and we're doing extra ones of those. So we're doing a couple of those every day. On Tuesday, for St. Patrick's Day, we actually did a virtual happy hour. Everybody was on Zoom, so that worked out pretty good. We all kind of toasted, and we had some beers together. So again, just trying to make the best of the situation, and because I totally understand for a lot of people who are, especially living by themselves in their apartments, it's tough, So just keep making sure that they all feel, they're reminding them to get up and move, go take a walk, all that. So I think it's one of those things people realize, but having a reminder definitely helps.
Mm. So, with that, we should talk about voice stuff at some point. And so you're the CEO of BlueTag. You were in the Alexa Accelerator 2018, was it?
That's correct, yeah.
And you provide voice shopping capabilities for retailers.
That is correct.
So we'll probably move away a little bit from the whole Corona thing over the course of the conversation. But before we do, are you seeing over the next couple of months, like one of the vlogs I'd put on LinkedIn was about how I think that smart speakers, it's make or break for smart speakers essentially over the next 12 months or so. Now that everyone's going to be spending more time indoors, close to the smart speakers, not voice in general, just specifically smart speakers. What are your thoughts on what this might do, and potentially, although, thoughts go out to people who have got or contracted this disease and anyone who is in a bad situation over it, but broadly speaking, with everyone at home, are you viewing it with the same lens that this is a good opportune time for retailers to think about onboarding themselves into the Alexa smart speaker virtual assistant ecosystem?
Yeah, so from our side, we've definitely seen a significant surge in usage for all our customers. And again, as you mentioned, the primary reason being that more people are home right now, for unfortunate reasons, but people are currently at home. So that's one aspect of that, and then the other aspect, we don't know exactly where that falls in, but I think generally also, I think people are becoming a little bit more wary about touching things. So, when you start looking at, if I'm in the kitchen, you have kids at home, everybody's playing outside, coming back in, and you want to, do you necessarily want to, like, if you want to, for example, we have grocery customers, if I'm running out of milk and I want to just add that to my shopping cart, do I necessarily need to, launch a browser and go to the computer, touch things if I just have to do a task? So again, I'm not saying that that's the reason, but it could be a combination. But I think overall, we're going to come out with a bunch of new normals that are going to get formed through this whole situation. And I think one of them might just generally be that, hey, we don't need to really touch a lot of things. So, but overall, regardless of that, we are seeing a surge in usage, especially, a couple of customers that do household items and groceries where, that is essentials that people do need regularly. And, being able to do that, using voice is something that's there. So, I would definitely agree that I think a lot of the retailers and brands have already started thinking. We've started getting more inquiries over the last couple of weeks. With them, being more interested in making sure that they're able to capture that ambient computing now that people are around smart speakers more.
What would you class as a surge in usage? Is it like twofold, threefold? Is it 20%? Like what kind of surge are we talking here?
It depends on the use case and the retailer. For example, I could talk about one particular one, in general. For example, on the East Coast, we have a grocer, Fresh Direct, and what they do is that they do groceries right now. So for them, the biggest thing that's happening right now, Kane, is that, a lot of people are looking for delivery slots, and the delivery slots are not available. So when people are going online, they're literally just waiting and then clicking refresh, trying to see when the next slot opens up, because that's the biggest problem right now. So what we've done is that, now you can just go and say, Alexa, ask Fresh Direct for the next available delivery slot. And it can just kind of tell you, like, hey, there's nothing available. Or it could say that, hey, I see a slot available on Friday at 10 a.m. Do you want me to reserve that for you? And at that point, if a user says yes, it reserves it for you. So that's something that's an ideal use case right now for them. And that's getting, that's definitely going to increase more than 2, 4, 5-fold, because that's a real need right now. And I think when it comes down to when we talk about voice shopping and voice commerce, it really is not just limited to a transaction, but there's so many different elements of retail journey that become relevant. And as and when we work with retailers, and I'll go into a few more use cases later on, depending on what their needs are, they realize that it's not necessarily, you can't just think about, oh, nobody's going to buy using voice as much as they will buy using your web or mobile. That could be true in a lot of use cases, but there's so many aspects that would make so much more sense through voice that actually just are naturally going to be a shift in user behavior. Now, once people get used to something like this, that puts a retailer that is offering that service, absolutely gives them a competitive edge, right? Consumers have so many options right now. They have multiple places where they can order from. So how do you make sure that in this competitive landscape, you're providing something additional that adds, comfort and convenience for your customers is how retailers need to think, yeah.
So are you seeing the surge in usage is it also a surge on the transactional side, people checking out, or is it predominantly people wanting to do other things like add stuff to the shopping list and like almost like those little micro tasks within the journey as opposed to the transaction? Or are you also seeing actually an increase in people on the transaction end as well?
No, absolutely. We're definitely seeing an increase in transaction size. So, there's a lot of direct-to-consumer brands that have a lot of reorder use cases. So whether you're reordering, your coffee beans, let's say, we have a customer that sells coffee, and they have they have like more than 1 million Instagram followers. They have a really loyal customer base, and now people are more home, so they're ordering more coffee. So now literally people are just saying that, hey, can you reorder my coffee from this place? And at that point, they can, quickly place an order without having to go through that whole thing, and they're running out of coffee. So definitely the transaction volume for things that people are looking for more. And right now, I think it's a little bit more concentrated on those essentials and things that people need while they're at home. But again, what that leads to is that when people start, and a lot of people have actually discovered the capabilities of these brands that, hey, I can actually reorder something using voice. But essentially what that also does is that it actually adds to another element of their behavior change, saying that, oh, if I'm able to do this with this brand, should I go and try this with a different brand? Those are the kind of things that, although right now it's more focused on things that people are in need of today more because of the current situation, it is something that's adding to their user behavior shift. I think that's important to note.
One of the things that I was thinking, I've kind of got to the point where for certain things, I think I do have an established behaviour now. It used to be that I was just testing. So I would order like some dog treats, and it was just purely just because I'm testing and I just want to figure out how the interaction looks. But literally the other day, we were on the way out, we were going out, it was Artie's nap time, we were going to go for a walk. We had probably about 3 or 4 dog poo bags left in our roll. And honestly, on my way out, I said, Alexa, order more dog poo bags. And look, I've got the Echo Show in the kitchen, looked at the one that I knew that I'd ordered, just said, yeah, order number 1, and it was done. And I shit you not, it was from going from the dog cupboard to get his lead to the back door to leave the house, I ordered the dog poo bags and then left. It was like literally a 5-second situation. So that was like, I think that seems to be like an established behavior for me. Now, it wasn't me testing, it was just something that I actually needed to do. So it's interesting the way you mentioned the consumables and the things that need to be replenished quite a lot. That dog poo bag one being one example. But do you think that people will do that often enough with enough brands to make voice shopping viable for lots and lots of retailers? So how many consumable kind of things do I need to regularly buy, and do I need to buy them from a whole bunch of retailers? Or are you seeing the retailers that you're working with just happen to be fairly large and they sell a whole load of stuff, and so people will dip into the skill, order something, dip out, dip back in, order something, dip out? How does that look?
So I think the way it looks right now is that, generally right now, when you think about reordering, like you mentioned, the bags that you ordered, the dog poo bags, right? You're ordering them from Amazon right now because it's convenient. I don't know if you really price compared to make sure, were they cheaper somewhere else, or would they be, there might be other retailers out there or even the same retailer who's selling it through Amazon, .com might have their own direct to consumer websites where you might be able to get a better deal maybe. But the reason you're doing that, directly also is that because it's convenient, right? So what essentially voice commerce and the way we're implementing that is that we're saying that, generally just like your behavior is changing towards ordering a few things that can be easily done through voice because you could do other things while you're doing that. Similarly, there's going to be other brands that have their own sites, and they do have loyal customers who also need the same convenience, right? So now if you, let's say, had another place where you would prefer ordering the bags from, but you just did this because it was convenient for you, imagine that you actually had the same ability to do it from that other store as well, and while you're walking out, and you could just say that, hey, can you order my bags from this place, and it's the exact same experience. It is going to impact your loyalty towards that other brand as well, because now they've also made your life a little easier. So I don't think it's a matter of saying that, okay, only large brands, only brands that have a lot of money to spend to market their voice apps are going to benefit from that. I almost think that there's other brands that are, the smaller brands actually can probably take even a bigger advantage of this thing, because they might have products and offerings that are really, really good for their customers. But it comes down to the ability of, how well are they able to connect with that customer and give them that ability and, convenience.
You brought up an interesting point about the price shopping for these bags. Kane, about how much are, you said poo bags? How much are poo bags?
I just wanted to see how many people how many times can we say dog poo bags in the podcast? They're about a fiver, something like that. £5, €5.50, something like that.
Right. So not very expensive. If you were, let's say, buying something that was £20, £40, would that change how you would have performed that activity?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose if it's a fiver, £4, something like that, then it's like it doesn't really matter about the quality of them, as long as they are able to pick up the dog poo. Usually the ones are biodegradable, so when I glance at the screen, I see that they're green. I roughly know that it's the right kind of thing, but I don't know, to be honest. I haven't yet got to the point where I'm ordering more expensive regular stuff through it, to be honest.
Yeah, because the thing that I was wondering there is, that's £5, right? It could be £4, it could be £6, but £1 either way really doesn't make that much of a difference. In your situation, you're someone who's fairly well off. But, the question I have here is, we have entered a recession. People are expecting unemployment to increase. People, perhaps their wallets are a little tighter. And so the question for you is, how do you think that's going to change how people shop through voice, or conversely, how businesses need to present their products through voice to cater to these people who are more price sensitive now?
I think it would definitely make a difference. I think you absolutely correct. Like we just talked about, that he's not really price sensitive because it's maybe only $5 or £5. But after a while, when you start going through a stage where people's mindset really shifts, and in a situation like this, when you are going through a recession, people are careful about every dollar that they start spending. And at that point, it does change, right? At that point, you're not going to, even if it's a matter of $15 or £15, you're going to try to find the best value, and it could be somewhere outside of the standard marketplaces that you buy from. And if you can provide that convenience, saying that, okay, I know that this is the place that I get the best value for my money, I want to order from there, but at the same time, I also want that convenience of being able to do it through voice, that is absolutely going to impact that. And I think those are the kind of things that are going to make a difference. And what we look at, that is one aspect of that. But when I gave the earlier example of, coffee companies, so, we work with Black Rifle Coffee, for example. I drink that coffee. That's, the coffee that I really enjoy in the morning. But again, for me, if I was to, and I've been using voice ordering for a while, through Amazon and through Alexa. So for me, having that option now to be able to order that coffee with the same exact convenience that I was ordering something else on Amazon.com, it really changes the mindset. because now I'm saying that, okay, I'm getting the same service or convenience doing something with the brand that I want to interact with, whether it's for the quality reasons or the price reasons, but I have that same convenience. So, again, pricing is going to be just another one of those elements that's going to impact where you really want to end up at.
How do you think it'll work with the competition side of things? Because Amazon itself is a retailer. I know that obviously there's Google and things like that, but a lot of the attention is on Alexa because it's the smart speaker market leader. We're talking about people spending a lot more time in the homes, and so it makes sense to frame the conversation in the Alexa space. So with Amazon being a retailer itself and you providing the technology to enable other retailers to get themselves established and to sell more on the Alexa platform, how are you seeing is there a competitive element to it, in that if a retailer is Pets at Home and they sell dog poo bags, and then Amazon also sell dog poo bags, Amazon Basics ones, is there a case of I will always need to ask for Pets at Home to give me the dog poo bags? So are we or is there a space for, so there's two questions. Is there space for other skills that are retailers to compete against Amazon's normal first party offering? I suspect the answer is no, but is there? And then secondly, if not, and the aim is to get people into your skill, how are retailers approaching that education so that people are aware that they have products exist on the platform?
So that's a great question that you bring up, right? And I get that question asked all the time about having brands and retailers who are competing with products that exist on Amazon.com. So I think the way and we work really closely with the Alexa teams and the Amazon Pay teams, and just through our investment, also through the Alexa Fund and the Alexa Accelerator, and it's a very clear vision right now. I think what Amazon sees, and let's just focus on Alexa for a moment and not other assistants. Alexa, what Amazon sees is that Alexa needs to dominate and become the default voice assistant for everybody out there. So I think what their goal is, it's a lot bigger than just trying to sell a competing product. It's more dominance in the voice assistant space. And when I start to think about, when you look at how many people, whether it's more than 50% of people are going to start their searches through voice, or all the stats that we see, that, and it is kind of getting to that stage. When you start looking at in that capacity, you can almost imagine that this is almost a race for owning search. You don't even talk about owning product search, but this is a race for owning search. Now, for when you think about in terms of Alexa, let's just take an example that I'm going to say that, hey, let's say, when screen devices are coming in, I'm talking to my screen device and I'm looking for shirts, right? So if I ask Alexa, be like, Alexa, find me, dress shirts to wear to work. And at that point, if Amazon just comes back and says that, hey, according to Amazon Basics top choice is this shirt, and if I'm never going to be if I like buying my shirts at J. Crew and they give me Amazon's top choice shirt that is not going to be relevant to me, for me to ask that question again is going to become irrelevant, and I will never repeat that again. So, Alexa realizes that for me to use Alexa again for a proper search, they have to deliver results to me that are relevant to me as an individual. So if I'm interacting and if I'm connecting with brands like, whether it's Bloomingdale's, whether it's, Rothy's, if those are the brands I like, don't show me shoes and dresses from brands that are basics brands that I will never buy, because like I said, that is going to become irrelevant. So, it is a fine balance for sure. Again, there's no exact science behind how the discovery would happen. There's no science behind of which product is going to get promoted more. But the reality is that, there is realization with the voice assistants that in order to, become the leading voice assistant and the leading voice search platform, you have to make sure that whatever I get as a result is very relevant to me.
That's a really fair point about how, that's best for consumers, and so that's best for Amazon. What are your thoughts about something that I think Kane and I both encountered when speaking with companies, which is not necessarily, our products won't rank high. I think that's a concern, and you answer that very well. But their fear sometimes is that Amazon is gathering up, Google to a lesser extent, but definitely Amazon is gathering up all this data about how their customers interact. And companies tend to be sort of afraid of that. Is that something that you think is misplaced?
I think so. I think it is, and I think that's another one of the bigger reasons why that conversation about or the need of a platform like what we are doing, it becomes extremely important. Because when you look at a product catalog, so the way our platform works is just a quick brief on that is that we have a platform where a retailer can connect their existing store or a product catalog. So they could have a custom platform like Bloomingdale's, or they could have a custom, or they could just be on a Shopify or a Magento platform. You can connect your product catalog to BlueTag's platform, and then we generate branded Alexa and Google Assistant skills. So essentially what's happening is that when I'm asking a question about adding things to the shopping cart, that information is staying on the BlueTag platform layer, which sits between a retailer and the voice assistant. Yes, I mean, all the questions you ask Alexa, there's data that obviously that can be saved, but a lot of the recommendations, a lot of the AI that we do to provide the right recommendation sits in our layer. And I think there is an additional sense of comfort from retailers when you start looking at that. And I always look at even, I'll give an example of a really large retailer that we work with out of New York. Their headquarters in New York. And, our first meeting literally lasted with them for about like 40 seconds. We went in there and they're like, we don't do anything Amazon. And that was it. That was really it. Now they are a customer of ours. And, once you start telling them that, we are this layer that sits in the middle, the data resides with us, all the users that are interacting, we have that information, what they're doing, what they're adding to shopping carts. None of that information is passed over to any of the voice assistants, whether it's Google or Amazon. There is a certain level of comfort that they start getting. And at that point, they realize that, hey, if all these headphones are coming with a voice built into it, the cars are coming with voice built into it, right? So if I have my Bose headphones with Alexa built into it and I'm running and I need new running shoes, if that person is my customer, I need to be on Alexa. That doesn't mean that I have to be on Amazon. So it's almost like, and it's almost like you start thinking about like AWS versus Amazon, right? Like you can still host your website on AWS. You don't need to be on Amazon.com, which a lot of companies also have policies not being on AWS just because they're like, okay, we don't want to do anything Amazon. But I think that mindset is changing. And the biggest example I give is example of, even something like Microsoft Office being available for iOS. It's something that your customer is there. You just need to decide if you want to be where your customer is. And if the customers have Alexa, I think naturally you need to be there in this competitive landscape. You have to basically go to where your customer already is.
So let me just clarify this then, just to see if I got this right in my head. So, and Dustin, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were asking was whether if I'm a retailer and I have a whole load of product that I want to sell, and I stick all of that onto the platform, the Alexa platform, Amazon, at some level, because it's parsing all of the utterances and then determining what the intent is for each utterance, will ultimately be able to tell how much of my stock is selling and then be able to do something competitive about that. Was that the crux of your question or not?
Yeah, I think so. When speaking with companies, yeah, it definitely is that they've got the slot values, they've got the intent. So if they could, I'm not saying that they are doing this, but if they really wanted to, potentially they could say, okay, well, J.Crew, let's go back to that example. J.Crew sweaters are really heating up. Let's go ahead and pump money into our Amazon Basics sweater line.
So, but then Shilp, what you were saying there then is that the BlueTag software sits in the middle of Amazon and the retailer, and you kind of made it sound as though through using BlueTag that what we were just discussing isn't an issue. Does that mean that you are acquiring or obtaining some kind of first-party data that's hidden from Amazon? How does that interaction between the Alexa platform, BlueTag, and the retailer work?
So any utterance that happens, anything that you ask Alexa, Amazon would always have access to that if they wanted to, right? So that's something that we cannot, because they are talking to Alexa. But for example, right, let's say I say, I can say, Alexa, ask Bloomingdale's to find me some black dresses to wear to a cocktail party. At that point, what happens is that we display certain results on the device, if it's a screen device. If not, then we can say that, hey, do you want me to email you some recommendations? All of that recommendation, anything that happens beyond that question or utterance is happening on our platform, and that information does not get passed back to Amazon's ecosystem from our side. So, there's going to be some data that if you really want to think about that, they'll use that against you. What questions are getting asked, that information is there, but it gets limited to a very small amount of data that actually they have access to from a retailer side when it comes to working with the platform like that. And that's one of the biggest reasons, and even Amazon realizes that. We remember having those initial conversations where they had brought it up that, they also realized that a lot of retailers would want to take advantage of this new channel of selling things, which is through voice. Just like we went from like desktop to mobile, now voice is going to be the next where they need to sell through that, but they also want to make sure that they have that comfort that they're not sharing all that information, all the transaction data, all of that with Amazon. And that's essentially where the platform comes in, where it helps with that. So yes, to answer your question in a shorter form, there's going to be some information that's still there, but bulk of the information related to a product catalog and what is happening with that interaction with the user stays away from there.
And changing topic just slightly, one of the things I've noticed is that I think we've said the word Google maybe 2-3 times here. And, a lot of the conversations about voice first really does move down that tack of talking about Alexa primarily and Amazon primarily. Would you say that there are certain companies that should focus on building for Assistant first, or is everyone really should build for Alexa first, or they should be on both?
So we still have companies that are building only for Google. They still have internal policies that would make them not, built for Alexa. We do see that changing, but I think right now, when you look at companies in the US, there are more Alexa devices out there. So we have more companies, regardless of that, thing we talked about earlier about feeling, a little bit of fearful towards competing with Amazon and having that. We still have more companies who are more excited about building for Alexa first as opposed to Google. But yeah, with companies like Fresh Direct, they compete directly with Amazon Fresh. I mean, if you really think about it, Amazon Fresh sells groceries, Fresh Direct sells groceries. There's almost like maybe even names that are similar, right? But they also realize that they want to go Alexa first and then move in. So we did Alexa first for them and then move to Google because they also realize that there's more customers that are used to using Alexa here at least. But I think eventually it has to go both. You have to deliver experience that is available on all voice devices, and that's what we try to tell the customers as well, is that we're giving you a platform where you connect your product catalog and it creates a voice dialogue with the product catalog for you, and we make it available on all voice devices because the reality is that these devices are going to coexist, right? You might wake up next to like an Echo Dot by our bed, you go to the kitchen, you have a Google Assistant that has a screen, your car has something else, your TV has something else. So how do you carry that conversation in a consistent fashion across different voice assistants is something that we focus on a lot.
And are there other platforms that you're looking at, or really just focused on these two for now?
Right now, these are the only two we've done. But when more and more of them become relevant in a capacity where we need to, we'll make sure that it's available there too.
What are some of we might have touched on maybe the biggest one, but what are some of if there's retailers listening now, in the context of what we've just been speaking about in terms of people spending more time at home, more time around the smart speakers, what are either some of the biggest pushbacks that you have from retailers, or some of the biggest challenges that retailers are facing in making this happen, and how are you getting over those barriers or helping them get over those barriers?
So I think biggest challenges, so there's that's a really good question. And I think what's happened right now is that just like, what we saw with early days of e-commerce, what was happening in early days of e-commerce was that, retailers were spending millions of dollars trying to build their websites, host their websites, and the experiences were, they were getting good, but they were not very consistent. What the difference at that point was that I'm kind of aging myself here, but I remember back in the days going online and trying to buy something. Every time I would buy it from the same site, I would have to enter my credit card again and again. Sometimes it would give me an error, but then I would try it again and eventually it would make a purchase and I'd be pretty happy. I'm like, great, I just bought something online, right? The difference is that, at that time, buying something online there was only one way to do it, so whether the experience was broken or not, people still saw that it was the convenience was still there. So you still found it easier to be able to not have to step out. And even if it took you an extra, 5 to 10 minutes to kind of put that transaction through, people were able to do that. It's a little different with voice. With voice, people actually have another option already in place. People can go and check for that time slot using their browser. Yes, you have to keep refreshing it. When you check out, when you add something to your shopping cart, people already have an option that they can do right now using browser or mobile. So where voice comes in and how retailers have to think about it is that the only way this is going to work is that if you actually provide them something that is going to make it a little bit more convenient than their existing experience, because they have an option to do pretty much everything that you can do with voice over a screen. And when retailers, just like retailers were spending millions to build their websites in early days of e-commerce, now a lot of retailers have tried spending a lot of money, and some of the numbers I look at are kind of like, it's pretty astonishing how much money they've spent building these extensive voice applications. And they've used probably the same teams that have built their mobile and web experiences. And you cannot do that. You're not trying to replace your web experience to bring it to voice. People don't talk like the way they type, or the way they browse. So keeping in mind that, you have to build this thing in a very different mindset, and you have to make sure that you're giving them something that's very natural for them to do using voice, because voice is the most natural thing that somebody can do to take an action. So how do you shift that user behavior is by letting them know of a few things that you're doing to make their lives easier, and just do them really well. So the retailers are facing a challenge because they're trying to do too much, if I may say, with voice. What we suggest is that do less, right? So for example, if I'm working with Black Rifle Coffee, they have a lot of people doing reordering. A simple thing is that when somebody places an order online, they send an order confirmation email, and all it needs to say is that, hey, next time just ask Alexa or Google to reorder your coffee, right? So now what you're doing is that, when you send out a shipping information, right, you can say that you can ask Alexa for your order status. So what you're doing right now is that you're capturing the moment when they're about to take some action and letting them know, be like, hey, by the way, you can also do this using your voice assistant. And that's the mindset people need to have, is that what are the different aspects of your shopping journey, including adding things, including checking out, including status. There's a lot of things that happen in somebody's shopping journey. How can you take elements that are relevant and just let them know that, hey, you can also do this using voice? And those are the kind of things that we've seen that are shifting user behavior, as opposed to saying that, hey, we've now launched a voice app and you can do everything you can do online on voice. That just hasn't worked. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge is that retailers are trying to do a little bit too much, and they're looking at it in a wrong way.
And in that example, that was a really good example. By the way, I love that trying to work out what the customer journey is, and then figuring out where voice makes sense throughout that. That's some stuff that we've been thinking a hell of a lot about lately. And from your perspective, if you're advising retailers, is the value of doing that? There's obvious value in doing that in terms of making the user journey easier, more friction-free, if you like. Was that a double negative? More friction-free? I don't know. But is the main reasons for doing that to excel in customer experience? So, for example, if I can now check my order delivery, the second question that people will ask, other than is Amazon going to steal my data, is what's the ROI? Well, if I'm going to invest X amount of thousands of pounds in doing this, what return am I going to get on that? So, for you, and when you're speaking to retailers, are you approaching it from an ROI perspective, thinking that the ROI is excelling compared to your competitors by providing a seamless experience in a more convenient way? Or does all of this in some way, shape or form lead to selling more?
Yeah, so I mean, it's more about, I think what happens is that the biggest thing in retail it comes down to is the lifetime value of a customer, right? So whether you're a direct to consumer brand, how many more times how connected is that consumer to your brand? So when we start looking at, I'll give an example of a use case that might not seem very relevant for voice, but I'll tell you why it is. So somebody like Rothy's, right? Rothy's is a big direct-to-consumer brand, loyal customer base. They sell shoes, right? Women's shoes. So now, as right from the beginning of the mindset, you'll be like, that's never going to make sense for voice. But Rothy's they're a very progressive brand. They realize that for them to maintain that customer loyalty, they have to connect with them at every level. So, when we launched their initial voice app, the goal were simple, right? So what do their customers do? Their customers reorder shoes for sure, but then at the same time, they're also coming and trying to find out if there's a new shoe that they released, or can they find a new shoe that they would like to buy from Rothy's, because they regularly release new shoes. So, those are the kind of things. So what we do is that, because when you launch, you don't have like tens of thousands or people using the app right away, we focus a lot on surveys and collecting even NPS data and things like that, right? Because what you need to see is that, hey, let's take a group of people, see how they interact with this voice app, and see if it's going to make sense. And if we are able to get enough value out of that, then we know that it makes sense to kind of let everybody know that please use this app, right? So in those cases, what we saw was that, we have some numbers, and right off the top of my head, what I remember is like, it's something like 67% of the people were actually able to find the product in a very quick voice search fashion when they used a voice assistant. And we actually had something like 3% of them actually completed the transaction using voice. So when you start looking at these numbers, and then, based on our survey, we do satisfaction survey, and, through our even, other data that we collected, we had something like, there were like almost 40% of the people that said that they're actually more likely to shop at Rothy's after they've experienced the voice experience, right? So it actually gives them a little different, how they feel about a brand. Their mindset also changes when they see that you can do certain things. So again, I know everybody calculates ROI differently. ROI should really just be like, okay, how much did I sell through this particular channel? But voice adds a very different element of satisfaction, and you're actually enhancing a brand for somebody by providing additional services where they feel a little bit more connected with your brand. And we're also seeing that, you have people who are interacting with your brand more often, whether it's something as simple as just like saying, hey, is there any upcoming offer? Do I have any upcoming offer at Bloomingdale's? So even something as simple as that, you have somebody who's more connected with your brand, who basically comes home and just has something on their mind, and they can quickly ask that question, even they might not take that action. It changes the perception they have about a brand. And what we see right now, Kane, is that, we've seen people who have come up for renewal, right? So somebody signed up a 3-year subscription with us. They're coming up for renewal, or 6 months. And for us, it's we're like, okay, are these, do they see enough value in what we provided? And when they look at the data, when they look at how people are using it, and they see what people are doing, they are almost saying that, what you just gave me over the last 6 months, I cannot afford not to have that data, because I can see the trend, I can see where it's going, and I know that, and I'll be the first one to say that today, if you plug this thing in, it's not going to change your business. It's not going to be something that, all of a sudden now we have extra volume of orders that have started coming in. But what they do realize is that, whether we are 16 months away or whether we are 24 months away from it being something that everybody is expected to have, and we are not far from that day, we can see the trends. But for brands, the brands that are working with us right now, what they realize is that they see a trend saying that, okay, in 18 months, when this thing becomes absolutely necessary for everybody, I can see why I will have a distinct competitive edge over my competitors because of the data that I have today. And that's the reason that makes them renew them over again and again. And we have pretty much, all of them, the retention is extremely high because of the way of what we are selling into them as well. And I think that's another issue also, that there's been some, agencies and companies that have almost given, I won't say false promises, but the expectations have been set very differently for a lot of these retailers. And when you start telling them that, hey, the way you have to think about it is that when this becomes something that you absolutely must have, starting today is going to give you an edge. And then it starts to make sense to them, and they start seeing the value, that this is the amount I'm spending over the next 24 months. And that's going to be a very small amount based on what the edge that it's going to give me, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. And you also mentioned last time we spoke that, so it sounds as though that some of the data that people are collecting to inform their understanding of the potential of this stuff is more important actually than the physical sales that they're making. But when we last spoke, you did actually mention something pretty interesting, which was around Fresh Direct, and that you were saying that their reorder cases were kind of like 6-7% increased on the shopping size basket or something like that using the voice platform.
Yeah. So the initial data that we have actually, it's, so in some cases, we've even had like up to like 11-12% of increase in shopping cart sizes of people once they start using the voice assistant. Because generally, when you talk about, Fresh Direct and groceries, it is a very relevant, it's probably the most ideal use case for voice, honestly, doing groceries. So everything is kind of like designed for that almost, if you could say, because there's so many of these devices that are sitting in kitchens as well. You're cooking, you're adding some butter and you're like, oh, I just ran out of butter. You don't have to stop that action. You can just be like, hey, can you just add butter to my shopping cart, right? So those are the things that we're seeing. And in there, we are seeing a direct result, and we are seeing an absolute increase in shopping cart sizes, for people who start using it even for the first time.
And so we've touched on a few interesting, I think, reasons why retailers should be considering BlueTag and Alexa in general, or voice in general, for their services. And one of the things that I find kind of interesting is how things change over time. And you were saying there around, if you invest in it now, in 18 months' time, or whenever this thing blows up, which it sounds as though the trend is pointing towards it, that happening at some point. You invest in it now, you get the knowledge, you understand how people are interacting with your brand, you can see the trend happening, etc. There is opportunities to increase your shopping cart size, there's opportunities to improve the customer experience throughout each stage of the customer journey. If there was something else that you could say to wake retailers up to the opportunities here, it might be interesting to maybe, given that you've been working in this space for quite a while, it might be interesting to consider what has changed in terms of, you've been talking about trends. So in the last 2 years, what has some of the kind of voice shopping or voice commerce trends been, and where have we come from and where are we now, and where are we now? How is that different to 2 years ago, and how will that be different as we move forward over the next sort of 12, 18 months?
Absolutely. So if you look at 2 years ago, like 2017 was the first year when we had real shopping data that came out, right? So at that point, voice-based commerce was about 1.8, 1.9, so almost $2 billion. That's basically what the voice commerce data was in the US. And at that point, it was primarily people, reordering things on Alexa, on Amazon.com through Alexa. That, you could say bulk of it was that. Some of it may be, Google Assistant, Google Express, but essentially that's where bulk of it was. And since then, there's been different things that have changed, even when you start looking at like people buying movie tickets, and, different aspects of commerce. So people have since then gone away from just buying things on Amazon.com, and they're now buying, so then the next thing was that they started buying things that they don't need to look at, kind of just, it's a quick reorder or a quick order using voice and complete that transaction. And since then, it's been on track to get to $40 billion by 2022. So when you look at that trend is going to involve all the retailers to participate and be where the trend that Amazon.com started in so many ways for voice shopping. And when you start looking at that trend, it becomes pretty obvious that if you want to be, and again, even if you're not on Amazon.com, you are competing with Amazon.com or you're not, it doesn't matter. The reality is that just like Amazon is known to set trends for shopping, right? Whether it's free 2-day shipping, whether it's the expectations of what you expect from a customer service, return, all of that, they create the trend. They set the user behavior, and then retailers match up and follow, and people get comfortable with that because people's expectations are very different right now. So what they need to realize is that Amazon has already set the trend for voice shopping. User behavior is already in place. These numbers are large, right? So, and even when you look at this year, more than 10% of all people are going to shop through voice. So here I just have some stats. So more than 21 million users will make a purchase using a smart speaker in 2020. Last year, that number was almost 19 million people. So, and that is more than 10% of all digital buyers in the US. So I don't think a lot of people realize how normal it is for people to actually use that, And I was listening to this talk from Patrick from Amazon Pay at NRF, and so based on the numbers that they have, almost 39% of all US consumers are expected to make a purchase using voice in the next 3 years. And I'm not talking about 39% of people who have smart speakers. This is 39% of all US consumers. When you start looking at those numbers, those are pretty massive numbers. And so the trend is clear, right? There's a user behavior that has been created. Yes, this was created by Amazon because people got used to using Alexa to buy on Amazon.com. But now that behavior is in people's mind. You have to be there because that numbers is going to keep going up. And, there's going to be a significant disadvantage of people who are not taking that action right now because they think that, okay, voice commerce is, 2 years away. If they want to think that, they might be right that voice commerce is going to probably become mainstream 2 years from now. But there's going to be a significant disadvantage of people who are not starting today.
Interesting. So what do you think then? Let's kind of like briefly fast forward or go down the path for the next 12, 18 months. What do you think are some of the trends that we're likely going to see? We've kind of touched on a couple in terms of just the volume being generally increasing, and we've touched on a few kind of sample use cases like checking deliveries and reordering kind of like consumable kind of items. Is there anything else in particular that you are thinking that we'll see as far as retail and voice is concerned over the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah. So I think I went a little off track there, but yeah, we went to the reorder from Amazon.com. We went through, reorder and ordering now through third-party retailers. That's already happening in a pretty big way. And I think the next trend that is natural one that we're starting to see a lot is this introduction of a lot of these screen devices. So now there's more and more devices that are coming with screens, and people are also, getting used to that. Whether it's even when they listen to music, just having access to that track on your screen because they're used to seeing that on the car also now, it becomes something more relevant. So there's, and it's not even a matter of how many devices are going to be produced by Amazon or Google that have screens. You have to start imagining that we're headed to a world where every screen is going to have some sort of voice built into it. And that's what you have to think. All the new smart televisions are coming with voice built into it as well. So the trend that's heading towards now is that, everybody, including people who sell fashion, clothing, apparel, voice is going to become relevant for everybody. And, us working with somebody like Rothy's and Bloomingdale's proves that. So yeah, so to talk about trends, I think right now we've already established the trends of household items and reorder and things like that. But now the trend is towards everything that even requires a visual, because I think those are the people who have naturally till last year thought that because their products have a big visual element that they're not the right candidate for voice. So I think they have to get out of that mindset. Because regardless of what you're selling, you have to adapt to voice.
That's where the money is as well. If you need to see it before you buy it, then it's not going to be £5 poo bags, is it? Dustin, any final thoughts? Any last questions for Shilp?
No, nothing at all. I think this has been great. Thanks so much for coming on and giving us an insight into what you do and how the industry is looking. Absolutely. No, it was a great pleasure talking about this stuff.
Where can people go and try BlueTag, and how can people reach out to you if they want to start selling their stuff on Alexa?
Yeah, so you could go online. We have a website where you could go and self-serve and create your own account. Basically, we have a free service. We have a free plan that lets you create a basic skill for where you can promote your coupons, promotions, your store hours, FAQs, and basic things like that. So we highly encourage people to go to blue.ai. That's BLU.ai, and create a free account, play around with it. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to us via email or just reach out to us via contact form on the site, and we'll get one of the reps to kind of walk you through a little bit more, give you some live demos if you want, and show you how this works. But yeah, like I said, it's we believe in our product, so we have a self-serve product that people can use. Cool.
Shilp, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Ken. It's been great. Thank you.
That was Shilp Agarwal of BlueTag. Thank you, Shilp. That was an immense conversation. Any retailers listening, if that hasn't sold you on the value and why it's worth considering jumping onto Alexa and Google Assistant right now, then I don't know what will. I really do think that we're going to be spending a hell of a lot more time indoors over the next 8-12 months. I read a report yesterday that was saying that it could last 18 months. And so, there is people in the home sitting around their smart speakers that could benefit from your services and your products. Really like the way that Shilp was phrasing the value of it in terms of the ROI. So, you're looking at a 12% increase in cart size for what was it? Fresh Direct? Was it? Fresh Direct, yeah. Increase in cart size. You're looking at ways of optimizing the user journey, collapsing that user journey rather than making people whip out the phone and do a whole load of button pushing to try and get delivery times. You can just ask Alexa to do that. And they're looking at the trends. Apparently 39% of all Americans are going to be shopping via voice by 2022, and the trends are all pointing that way. I can honestly say that we use the dog poo bag example, but I can honestly say that is now a habit of mine. That's how I order those, and that will only grow and increase over time as I discover more possibilities and I come into contact with more brands and more experiences that have stuff that are of value to me, and I am not alone in that. So thank you, Shilp. That was absolutely amazing. Real food for thought. And do reach out to Blue Tag if you feel the need to put your products and services on Alexa, which I'm sure by now you do. And thank you, as Dustin, as always, and as always, boys and girls, thank you all for listening. Until next time, see you later.